Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. It's a Ukraine War Updates Extra video, giving you extra tidbits and nuggets to get your teeth into to give you a greater understanding of the war in Ukraine. It's been so long since I've done one of these videos that I've forgotten what I'm doing. Okay, let's go to a bit of an icebreaker here. This is a bit of footage that, do you know what? So here's a Russian soldier failing to throw a grenade, but actually his reaction's pretty decent here. And this is not inappropriate or anything. This is absolutely fine. But this is exactly the sort of thing that I'd imagine me doing in a battle zone. I would be this unlucky, this unfortunate, this uncoordinated maybe. Whoa! Do you know what though? He reacted pretty damned well there, and he palmed that grenade right out the way again, really successfully. So let's have a look at that. Right off a tree, back at him. Ouch. Whoa! Anyway. I think he needed better training at throwing a cricket ball at school. And this is a problem of Russia not learning to throw cricket balls. It means that actually their grenade throwing abilities are somewhat lacking. So just that would be my advice to the Russian training corps. Anyway, let's move on to Senator McCain, right? So the late Senator McCain here that ran for president against Obama. It seems to be that, like, well, Romney's a bit like this actually. So old school Republicans, we seem to have come to this new era where Republicanism, and I know this is going to annoy a lot of you, but it seems to have gone just to this really strange place. But McCain was a serious kind of old school Republican. Obviously, he had his own history in the armed forces in the Vietnam War. Here. He is absolutely on point, and he was involved back in 2014 Euromaidan, and before that he was out in Ukraine, and he knew his onions about this scenario, and he predicts the present situation so very well here.
Vladimir Putin's ambitions were very well known to me and to others. He knew that once Yanukovych left, he had to take Crimea because of Sevastopol. Then he tried the separatists, that didn't work. He armed the separatists, that didn't work. So then he sent in thousands of Russian troops. The fact is that they were slaughtering Ukrainians. There were hundreds killed, thousands in the hospitals. It's terrible. Poroshenko had no choice but to agree to a ceasefire. What is going to happen? I predict to you that it will be another step in Vladimir Putin's strategy to separate eastern Ukraine from Ukraine, and perhaps a land bridge to Crimea. No.
And perhaps a land bridge to Crimea.
It's a very bad result. And again, we would not send weapons to the Ukrainians when they were begging for them. We wouldn't even give them intelligence because we didn't want to, quote, provoke Vladimir Putin. By showing weakness, we provoked Vladimir Putin.
Why have I not seen this before? Thank you so much to one of the viewers who actually sent this to me. Really great. Sorry, I forgot who it was now, but I'm sure you'll let us know in the comments. This is like absolutely spot on. Oh, we didn't give them weapons because we thought we would provoke them. It's like now we're not giving them F-16s because we think we would provoke them.
Who do you mean by we? The United States? The United States working with the EU?
And of course the Europeans, but I wasn't surprised about the Europeans. I was deeply disappointed in the United States of America when they begged us for defensive weapons, and they wouldn't even do that. In fact, it was almost comical. They sent MREs.
Why were you not surprised by the Europeans, you say, not taking sufficiently tough action against
Because
Putin?
They're dependent on Russian energy. It's obvious. It was obvious.
2014, 9 years ago, and he's absolutely nailing it. Why were the Europeans not take a really strong stance on Russia? Well, because they're dependent on Russia for their energy. Germany, etc., etc. and that was the case at the beginning of the war. And the war has forced Europe to, disassociate itself from Russian energy, and that's good. And that I think gives a greater security, energy security, and arguably independence. I mean, it depends what you do. I mean, do you then go and straight into the arms of dictators effectively in the Middle East and get your energy from there? In which case, yeah, not great. Or, liquefied natural gas from the US is a safer bet because it's more likely that there's going to be a sustained peace with the US than with Russia. And then again, putting renewables into the mix. I know I said this the other day, and people saying, "Oh, you can't do this," and there's not enough renewables to power all the cars moving over to electric vehicles. And I actually responded to someone's comment on that, saying actually the analysis is it should be fine and it's all right. And actually, I've got solar panels on my roof, and I could, if I had an electric car, power my car off that. All it takes is regulation to get everyone's new houses. All new houses have lots of solar panels, etc., etc. I don't want to get into that debate again, but you get a point that you can do it. There are ways around this. If there's a will, there's a way. And if we really want to get energy independence, from Russia, then we need to do that. And I think nuclear it has to be in that mix. However, then you're thinking, well, where do the raw materials come from? Australia luckily has some pretty sizable uranium mines, although environmentalists are not a big fan of that being mined for obvious reasons. So these are complicated problems with complex solutions, but McCain was on it.
And the United States, it was obvious that we weren't going to assist them, and because they don't want to, quote, provoke Vladimir Putin. And there's nothing that provokes Vladimir Putin more than weakness. We have to understand that Vladimir Putin's ambitions are the restoration of the old Russian Empire.
Boom! I've got a new mic here and I don't want to drop it, but otherwise I'll pick it up. It's pretty heavy. I'll pick it up and drop it. Just, well done, McCain.
But he has
and that's not something I thought I'd say.
never said, has he, that he wants eastern Ukraine to be incorporated into Russian territory.
What he has said is, well, just a few days ago, he said, I could take Kiev in 2 weeks. But what he has said is,
and of course, he couldn't.
Is that he wants Nova Russia, which is an old Tsarist phrase, which means he wants eastern Ukraine. He wants to make sure he keeps Crimea, and he would like to see, if he can get away with it, Moldova and the Baltics as well. That's what he wants to see restored. He cannot afford to see a free, democratic, prosperous Ukraine, because the Russian people then would like to be like Ukraine.
Yes! It's exactly what I've been saying. And, he was there 10 years before, obviously. I mean, he knows what he's talking about. I'm just some random on the internet. But, the idea that that Putin had these imperialistic intentions, and it was about Sevastopol, Crimea, land bridge to Crimea, Nova, the kind of imperialistic new Russia, all of that just absolutely on point. It's just really, really nailed it.
Wants to see restored. He cannot afford to see a free, democratic, prosperous Ukraine, because the Russian people then would like to be like Ukraine.
And that's exactly what I've been saying. I said that just the other day again, that one of the big threats that Ukraine is to Russia is not about having a NATO country on the doorstep. It's about having a functioning democracy that presents a greener grass just over the fence. And if the Russians can see that Ukraine has a better, medium wage and quality of life and standard of living and economy and democracy, then actually that shows that democracy can work and bring a more sustainable standard to a country than what Russia has. Russia has had so much money coming into it from natural resources, from hydrocarbons being sold to the rest of the world. And where's that money gone? It's been concentrated in the top couple of percent. It's like classic. Just there's been no redistribution of wealth. I mean, considering you've gone from a communist state you would have thought there would be some kind of idea of distribute. I mean, that was problematic anyway. I mean, yeah, I read Animal Farm for the first time ever. Just finished it last week. My mate gave it to me because he's like, I can't believe you haven't read it, and I was like, I can't believe I haven't read it. Read it. It's like, oh my goodness, yeah. And you know, the communists, the farm, the Animal Farm, becomes the same entity it was before it took on being the Animal Farm. It goes back to being Man Farm, and it's a corruption of humanity and people at the top, you know, lining their own pockets and whatnot. And that seems to happen under most regimes, but it is least likely to happen under the most effectively operating democracies, right? So, and you can argue about the US democracy not being great, and there's a lot of the top 2% and the other 98% and everything. But actually, you look at Russia and it's insane, right? You've just got the rich, literally the richest people in the world, and everyone else. You know, you got the oligarchs and everyone else. So this kleptocracy, this oligarchy, is not favouring the Russian people. And as soon as they look over the fence and they see a functioning democratic system with a free market, then they're going to be going, oh yeah, we want some of that. And then you'll have discomfort and discord within your population, and then that's the end of your regime. So, you know, McCain was on it there. Anyway, sorry, I'm waxing lyrical about Senator McCain. That's, my goodness, pick that. Right, so Trentelenko having a thread about the 76th Guards Air Assault Division, GAAD, from Crimea that went to Luhansk recently from Crimea to Zaporizhia to act as reserves in the Robotyne area. Russia's military logistical dilemma, says Trentelenko. Okay, let's pop in to see what he has to say about this. Moving 6,000 to 8,000 VDV troopers to Robotyne on a priority basis with the Kerch and other Crimean rail bridges closed means they went by semi-tractor trailer from Rostov-on-Don to Melitopol. So this is in the Russian area back here. So they come out of Crimea into Russia and then back into the occupied territories of Ukraine, into Donetsk and then Zaporizhia and up to the Orikhiv area by semi-tractor trailer. Then by AFV, so armoured fighting vehicles, to Robotyne. Putting that 76th VDV Division PIG through the Russian Armed Forces logistical Python, PIG through the Python, on an emergency basis has opportunity costs. Moving the 76th means that the Russians are not moving fuel, ammo, beans and bullets to the troops that are on the Robotyne axis. Obviously, this has probably been done by now, so I don't know if this actually happened, but there are other nuggets in here that are worth looking into. As Defmon has mentioned, the VDV 76th is Russian Armed Forces Strategic Reserve, but there is more to it than that. The 76th got its guts ripped out near Kyiv at the opening of the war. So Russia backfilled it with reservists and Mobics, and have been heavily attrited in the fighting since then. The 76th is a regime security unit. It's chosen for political reliability first, and given the newest air transportable armoured vehicles to put down rebellions. If you are thinking Praetorian Guard, then you are correct. Whether the 76th Guard Air Assault Division flew to Rostov-on-Don and picked up equipment, or came by train with their equipment, isn't known. They were brought to backstop a lot of 20% to 50% strength units. For your information, so this is to say that there are a lot of units there that are operating below strength, and then the argument is also that the 76th were below strength, and there was just elements of the 76th because they've been so heavily attrited. No one's really got any full strength units anymore. For your information, Western combat units are considered combat ineffective at 70% strength, so they're operating at 20 to 50%, then hey, they're in trouble. The Ukrainian advances south of Robotyne appear to be on the verge of a strategic advance in order to warrant such an emergency move. And there is a sound military logistical dilemma-driven reason for this pig down a Python move of the VDV 76th. It is a threat of the Ukrainian drone surveillance and Gimler's fires dominating the M14 highway out of Rostov-on-Don. So this highway that comes down through Mariupol and through into... This is the highway that the Ukrainians want to get fire control over by getting to Tokmak. Level with Tokmak, level with Bilmak, and down and being able to take out that road. Russian military forces had nothing that can stop Gimler's from ravaging its semi-tractor trailer lifeline from Rostov-on-the-Don if the Ukrainian units push close enough. Close enough being between the 2nd and 3rd Surovikin line, and Ukraine is on the 1st line right now. So here we have those lines there, the 2nd and 3rd defensive lines. If the Ukrainians can get further down there, then that's what they're talking about, hitting the Russian logistic lines further to the south and parallel to the coast. Trentelenko continues, one thing that is certain is Russia is paying for a far higher price in counter-attacking Ukrainian advances on the Robotyne axis than simply defending. This is something I've been saying for some time, which is, the Russians are doing a good job at defending, by point of fact that it's taken the Ukrainians a long time to achieve what they have achieved. So that means they've built solid defenses and they have heavily mined fields. And that's good in terms of they've had months and months and months to build defenses, and they have gone about building those defenses, and they are causing the Ukrainians trouble. They are also counter-attacking whenever they lose any settlement or any ground. They seem to want to try and get it back as soon as possible. Now, on the one hand, that is good, as in they are making it really difficult for the Ukrainians to take land. But on the other hand, I keep saying that will attrit their own defensive forces far more than sitting back and just working defensively, trying to soak up the pressure rather than take it to the Ukrainians. If you take it to the Ukrainians, you are going to attrit people by effectively being on the attack. You're defending, but you're defending by attacking. So, yeah, it's attritional for the Ukrainians, but it's really attritional for you too. And Trentelenko picks up on that there. The short distance to Gimler's range on the M14 is the heart of Russia's military logistical dilemma, and I'd absolutely agree there. So thank you, Trentelenko. Right, we're going to go to Pekka Kalianiemi. He has written a whole thread on this chap here, who is a pretty famous Russian fascistic chap here. So in today's Vatnik Soup, I'll introduce a Russian-Norwegian mercenary, Jan Petrovsky, aka Vojislav Torden, aka Slavyan. He's best known as the co-founder of the Rusich group for committing war crimes in Ukraine and for trying to start normal life after in Northern Europe. So here we go. Right. Okay, Petrovsky lived his childhood in St. Petersburg but moved to Norway in 2004 when his mother married a Norwegian. After graduating from university, he started working in a True Metal tattoo parlor, a shop famous for its connections to many neo-Nazi organizations. And there you have him. In 2010, the tattoo parlor was raided by the police. During a search, they found forged documents and weapons that belonged to another Russian neo-Nazi, Vyacheslav Datsik. Petrovsky spent 1 month in custody, after which he was released due to lack of evidence. In 2011, he met another notorious neo-Nazi, Alexei Milchikov, at a paramilitary training camp in the Russian Imperial Movement, RIM. RIM has trained far-right militias around Europe, and it's designated as a terrorist group by both Canada and the US. This is the kind of stuff that, when you realize how much Russia is involved in the far right, you understand that the accusations that Ukraine is neo-Nazi are just completely, wildly inaccurate and, at the very minimum, massively hypocritical. So the Russians seem to have a very strong, fervent strain of ultranationalism that looks pretty much like Hitlerian Nazism, and that's just a bizarre place for the Soviet Union to be in. Freudian slip, Russia. In 2014, Petrovsky and Milchikov found the Rusich group, a neo-Nazi paramilitary group, which was quickly sent to fight against the Ukrainian army in Donbass, Ukraine. So these are perfect. And I think we touched on this maybe, 6 months ago or something. But these guys are perfect fodder for being sent to as little green men to Ukraine to do the bidding of the Kremlin, and they are almost disposable, but just perfectly positioned to go and fight against the Ukrainians back from 2014 onwards. Right, the group took part in the ambush of the Ukrainian Aidar battalion in September 2014. Is that in Ilovaisk? Rusich later published a video of Aidar's leader, Ivan Isik. Rusich members had carved a neo-Nazi symbol, Kolovrat, onto his cheek. A few days later, he was interviewed by pro-Russian propagandist Graham Phillips. Now, I did a whole segment on Graham Phillips, and I mentioned this interview. At this point, Isik's body was covered in burns, and he clearly violated journalistic ethics by interviewing a seriously wounded prisoner. Isik was later abducted from the hospital and murdered, after which his organs were cut off and shuffled in his body. Graham Phillips got in an awful lot of sticky water, hot water over that. Graham Phillips, ugh. But anyway, in 2015, Rusich left the Donbass and Petrovsky returned to Norway. In the video recorded in the same year, both Milchikov and Petrovsky admit to killing Ukrainian prisoners. He allegedly killed 6 Ukrainian prisoners of war who were captured in a battle near Luhansk in 2014. So he's a straight-up war criminal by his own admission. In 2016, he was arrested at the home of a leading Nordic resistance movement, also trained by the Russian Imperial Movement, member Ronny Bardson in Norway for violating immigration laws, and was deported. Norwegian authorities called him a threat to national security, which appears to be the case. And there you go. He returned to Russia, where he trains Belarusian children combat skills. I mean, imagine sending your kid to school to be trained by a neo-Nazi, including proficiency in knife fighting, tactics, hand-to-hand combat, and shooting. According to Ukrainian authorities, Petrovsky also later took part in some traditional Viking ritual. That looks like a real traditional Viking ritual. During 2016, ICC completed their preliminary investigation and opened a criminal case against Milchakov and Petrovsky for their war crimes and participation in terrorist organisation on Ukrainian soil. In 2022, they were also sanctioned by the US for their special cruelty. Ukrainian Myrotorets has also suggested that Petrovsky was fighting in Syria in 2017. Based on this report, he fought under a Russian unit that was led by a Norwegian. He allegedly fought again in Ukraine in 2022, this time in the ranks of PMC Wagner. On 20th of July 2023, he was arrested by the Finnish police in the Helsinki Vantaa airport shortly before their flight to Nice, France. Earlier, Finnish authorities had given Petrovsky a residence permit under his new name, Voislav Torden. His wife had been accepted to study in a Finnish Polytechnic University. This also allowed Jan and their 3 kids to get the permit for 1 year. According to Petrovsky's lawyer, he wanted his children to obtain Nordic education, and they were going to visit their relatives in France before settling down. Wagner-connected Telegram channel Grey Zone has complained about the arrest of Petrovsky. Really? And they claimed that he was abducted by the NATO Special Forces. They also organised a crowdfunding effort for Petrovsky's legal fund, which was accompanied with a message from his wife. Ironically, the group that's responsible for torture, abductions, and other war crimes, and has called for the genocide of Ukrainian people, are suddenly interested in international law. So depressing. I have previously written, says Pekka, about the Kremlin kids, the wealthy children who live a glamorous life in Europe and in the US, while their parents threaten these countries with nuclear weapons on Russian media. It seems Petrovsky and his wife are no exceptions in this sense. The former committed war crimes and killed Ukrainians en masse, and now they want the Nordic education for themselves and for their children. He even plans to apply for asylum in Finland. It's a really interesting point, actually, that could easily be overlooked, which is like, why are you literally going to put your life on the line fighting for Russian ideals, right? and then go back and want to educate your kids back in Nordic countries. It's not like someone going to Ukraine and volunteering. You're fighting for freedom. You're not necessarily fighting because you want, you like Ukraine so much you want to, you want to fight. You want to fight and, I don't know, put your kids through the schooling there or whatever. It is this sense of the ideal of fighting for, freedom, for democracy against this autocratic invasionary force. If you're going to fight for the invasionary force, there must be something about that whole setup that you're really, really fighting for. You must have some understanding of the situation that Ukraine is in. You can't be that brainwashed. I suppose you can. If it's so wonderful that you go and fight for that ideal, then is it similar to international volunteers, or is it different to international volunteers? Is it fine to go and fight for the Russians in the same way and then say, well, actually, I like you a lot, but not enough to put my kids through the education system? What is it about the ideology? What is it about fighting for Russia? Or is it just the kind of camaraderie of fellow neo-Nazis? I don't know. So I'm just thinking out loud here. Anyway, it seems that there are no different, says Pekka. He even plans to apply for asylum in Finland. These people want the best of both worlds. They want to keep their xenophobic traditional Ruski Mir worldview, but they also want the culture and comfort of the West. And at the moment, it seems they're getting it. There's plenty of evidence for Petrovsky's war crimes in Ukraine, and we even have a video recording where he admits this. For these alleged crimes, he should be extradited to Ukraine and treated fairly as a prisoner of war. Ouch. So that is a little insight into who he is. Right, we're going to move on, just really quickly drop in on Yuri Chernomorets. So Chris P, who I've been in contact with, and she's trying to get me to do an interview with Yuri, but actually he's unable to do so because he doesn't think his English is good enough and he'd need a translator. So that's a real shame. He's the theologian turned sniper turned fundraiser for sniping equipment to Ukraine. If that's of interest to you, check him out on Twitter, Yuri Chernomorets. Find him there. You can look at his handle up there and go and check out his work and the interviews he's done on TV with subtitles as well, and the fundraising he's doing to try and get equipment to snipers. Now, he was the subject of that the article I serialized from, I think, Euromaidan Press on snipers that was absolutely fascinating. And he talked a lot about, the kind of equipment he was fundraising for. So go and check him out and go and support the work he does if that's your want. Okay, here is for the final part of this. What's happened is I have recorded a discussion about the cost of getting rid of military equipment, and it turned out to be such a long discussion that I'm going to cut that off, and that'll be my entire extra for tomorrow. I find it really interesting. This would just be adding on to what I've talked about just previously, obviously, and that'll be enough for today. So this is Chris O'Wiki talking about a mercenary group we've already discussed previously called Wolves. Mobilized Russians who join the Wolves mercenary group say they are being threatened with execution if they don't go to the front line, despite being untrained. They have not been rotated for months due to manpower shortages caused by huge casualties. In April 2023, some Mobics were reportedly ordered at gunpoint to sign contracts transferring them from the Russian Army's 352nd Motorized Rifle Regiment to the Wolves private military company. Others seem to have been recruited directly from training. Since then, Astra reports the men have been sitting in positions in Ukraine for 6 months without a break due to lack of manpower to rotate them. The Wolves are known to have been positioned around Bakhmut. According to the wife of one of the men, quote, "My husband was mobilized in September 2022. He was sent to Kursk to the training ground, and for some time he was with PMC Wagner until in April 2023, PMC wolves came to the training ground. They began to lure people to them. You will come to us, we will train you, dress you, and you will have a rotation, 2 weeks in the position, 2 weeks on holiday. Some of the guys agreed as there was no real choice. Either go to the PMC Wolves or stay with Wagner, who were in the thick of it. As a result, those who went to Wolves are sitting for the 6th month. No one changes their positions. Once a month, they allow someone to go out to buy cigarettes, and that's it. Now the leadership of the Wolves is changing, and there are not enough people on the front line. The command, call sign Kadir, Baghdad, Costa, and Sin, said that all those mobilized would be stormtroopers and would soon go to the front line. Naturally, the guys raised a fuss. Without training, it is impossible. It would clearly mean death. The army unit said that we have no influence on the Wolves. On July the 1st, the Wolves signed a contract with the Russian Ministry of Defense. They were also told, you will all go there today, tomorrow, it's just a matter of time. My husband has already travelled to the combat zone, and everyone who was there came back wounded and concussed. Nobody wants to go there anymore. However, if they refuse, they'll be hanged for desertion, for example. She says that in July, a group of wives went to the unit. The deputy regiment commander told them, do you know how many 200s killed we have on the front? We don't have people. Do you understand? God, imagine that as a wife saying, right, I don't think you're treating my husband correctly. There's a strong chance of him dying, and I just don't like, and he's going to be sent to the front line to die untrained. And the person you're speaking to is like, yeah, do you know how many dead we got on the front line? Of course we're going to need your husband, because they're all dead on the front line. Like, that's going to make her think, oh, brilliant, I came here complaining about that, and you're justifying keeping him because of that. I mean, I don't mean to laugh, it's horrible. We have no one to replace him, everyone. Girls, what rotation? According to the wife, the discussion was recorded and he was fired after it became public. Wow. The men are also not being paid what they are owed according to their relatives. The relatives have written appeals to the Russian military authorities, but as usual, they've received no useful replies. And again, that is, I think, reflective of just the dire straits I think the Russian armed forces are in. Yes, they are doing a job on the front line and they are defending, as well as people with incredibly low morale and not getting paid and untrained can. They are doing a decent enough job of defending, but yeah, I don't think it's going to be enough. And at some point, I think you'll start to see some major desertions, quite possibly. Anyway, thanks for watching. Really appreciate you supporting the channel. Thank you for sharing, if you do, liking and subscribing and all those things. Absolutely wonderful. Take care of yourselves, and I will speak to you later.